they are very reluctant to pick up the issue, to investigate, because they have no structure and they don't know how to handle it.
Si existe una amenaza de origen desconocido que no tiene explicación, eso podría amenazar este sistema de conservación de poder.
I suspect there are at least 5 agencies in the U.S. government that have investigative capability and do maintain files on UFOs.
The public opinion, I think, is asking for information and is ready to believe that there is something serious. If we can convince the government, it could change. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean-Claude Ribes, and I am an astronomer working for the French Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique from 1963 to 1998. I contributed to the French Cometa report, a 3-year military study on UFOs and national security, released in 1999.
Cometa translates as Committee for In-Depth Studies. It was, in essence, a high-level think tank. Cometa included such members as 4-star General Bernard Lorlin, who was the former commander of the French Tactical Air Force and military counselor to the Prime Minister, as well as André Lebeau, former president of the National Center for Space Studies, and attorney-at-law Michel Algrin, director of the Cometa Group. The Cometa Group published its findings in an historical 90-page report titled UFOs in Defense: What Should We Prepare For? The formation of the Cometa Group was initiated by French Air Force General Denis Letty. Cometa concluded that about 5% of the cases studied were inexplicable and that the best explanation was what the authors called the extraterrestrial hypothesis. With investigative journalist Leslie Kane, I flew to France to meet General Letty. We met the general at his home on the outskirts of Paris. We went over some of the more puzzling encounters that led the group to their conclusions.
And he saw the disk hovering.
Pilot sightings confirmed by radar.
Going very quickly out of his sight.
And cases involving soil and plant analysis from landing sites. I had looked into one of these cases myself. Farmer Renato Nicolai from Trans-en-Provence reported that a disc-shaped object landed in his garden in the late afternoon.
La forme, c'était comme si on posait 2 assiettes, l'una sull'autre.
When he told his wife, she assumed he had heat stroke and had hallucinated. However, scientific analysis of the landing site showed high levels of radiation, and when I visited the site back in 1999, almost 20 years later, nothing had grown in that spot. The town of Trans-en-Provence labeled the farmer a flying saucer fanatic.
Je peux pas dire que c'était une soucoupe volante, que c'était... J'ai vu quelque chose,
oui.
Il s'est posé, il est reparti.
What we're looking at? I mean, what is this photograph? General Letty also shared with us some impressive photographic cases. One of these was featured on the cover of the Cometa report. So it's mapping, is it mapping the ground?
Mapping the ground. And developing...
A mapping plane from the government of Costa Rica was flying at 10,000 feet. It had a high-resolution camera running automatically under the fuselage, taking a picture every 17 seconds. On one of the frames, this object was captured. After careful analysis by several scientists, including Richard Haynes and Jacques Vallée, it was determined that the object captured on film was a real 3-dimensional airborne object.
So do you think if it was announced that people would panic? If the government's announced, well, the unidentified objects are real?
I cannot say yes, but I cannot say no.
I asked the general to explain the Cometa report's extraterrestrial hypothesis.
For us, we think that the best explanation is that object came from outside. We don't say they come from outside, but the best explanation is that hypothesis.
In 2007, an investigative branch of CNES, the French equivalent of NASA, made 1,600 sightings spanning 5 decades available to the public. I asked CNES for an interview. I wanted to know who allowed the release of these files and why.
C'est le président du Centre national d'études spatiales, quand il a décidé de remettre en route l'activité du GEPAN, de réorganiser, qui a donné comme mission de travailler de façon transparente vis-à-vis du public et des médias.
We reviewed several extraordinary cases. Some even involved landings. I asked him what his personal beliefs were.
Je crois que probablement nous découvrirons dans le futur que peut-être il y a de tout et que certains cas sont peut-être des visites extraterrestres, mais d'autres cas seront probablement des observations naturelles qu'on n'arrive pas encore à expliquer aujourd'hui.
Et ça, c'est grand comme histoire.
C'est grande histoire, oui. C'est un grand projet.
Ouais.
Big job. Huge job.
I wanted to know how releasing this information might have affected the people of France. We took to the streets.
J'ai vu un ovni, vous croyez tout de suite qu'il est fou?
Non, je pense qu'il doit y avoir des hallucinations ou certaines choses qui permettent de penser qu'on a vu un ovni alors qu'il n'y en avait pas.
Does it make you scared?
Yeah. I'm scared too that they're going to come and they're going to be hostile and they're going to try and they're going to hurt us or do something to the world.
Do you think governments know more than what they're telling us?
Apart from American governments.
Yeah. Est-ce qu'il est possible que ça peut venir ici?
Pourquoi pas?
So what do you think that the British government, the MOD, is preparing for any type of disclosure? Or do you think it's just how's it going to happen? Or is it going to happen?
It's not going to be, as I say, disclosure with a big D.
Right.
It's going to be disclosure with a small d. In other words, we will be releasing the files, but...
In May 2008, the British government began the process of releasing its entire archive of UFO files.
From 1991 through to 1994, I was the desk officer responsible for these investigations. And these cases included incidents where reliable witnesses, such as police officers and pilots, reported structured craft performing speeds and maneuvers significantly in excess of anything that they'd seen military jet aircraft perform.
In July of 2009, the Ministry of Defense released this document. It's a briefing regarding the mass sighting over England in 1993. In summary, it states, there would seem to be some evidence on this occasion that an unidentified object or objects of unknown origin was operating over the UK.
To the skeptics who say there's no evidence, I would say this. The Ministry of Defence in the United Kingdom has received 10,000 UFO reports since 1950. Not just lights in the sky, but structured craft, sometimes tracked on radar. But don't take my word for it. All this can be viewed at the National Archives on the Ministry of Defence website. So the evidence is right out there.
The phenomenon has not changed a great deal. It has not changed materially since 1947. And I'm quite sure that neither we nor the Russians had anything like the capabilities demonstrated by the UFOs in 47. I don't think we have now.
Thousands of witnesses now, credible witnesses, which can confirm that indeed they saw activities which cannot be related to terrestrial activities.
They're not aerodynamic. They're something else, and the suspicion is that they're anti-gravity or some kind of electromagnetic gravitic drive to them, which would explain a lot of things that goes on, including the electromagnetic effects on vehicles and so forth.
Furthermore, it is not customary for countries to test their secret weapons or secret devices in 133 different countries all over the place. And also, from a moral standpoint, I doubt very much that we would have sent astronauts to the moon using antiquated chemical fuels if we had a way of doing it much more efficiently.
If we have, then it's criminal that's being kept strictly in military hands, because this would solve all of our energy problems in the world.
So I've given up the whole idea that it could possibly be from any place on Earth.
Why don't governments tell the public what's going on?
To accept that some object overfly and the country being unable to clear the sky of the... You cannot admit it.
Do you think it's possible that it was from another world?
My Air Force training says I can't think that way, okay?
A story this big, there's no way it could be kept secret from the public. What do you say to someone like that that says that?
Well, somebody's kept it pretty secret for quite a while, haven't they?
Our country needs to reopen its official investigation that it shut down in 1969. The United States government can no longer shun an international dialogue about this phenomenon, and we invite the government to work in cooperation with countries as represented on both sides of me here today.
This position is supported by President Clinton's former Chief of Staff, John Podesta. Podesta, also an advisor to President Obama, spoke at a 2002 press conference organized by the Coalition for Freedom of Information.
I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law.
Bring up these witnesses from the Air Force and the National Aeronautics and Space Agency. Have them interrogated by members of the House or Senate committee. Let them put their records on the line. And let the people who have allegedly seen unidentified flying objects come and testify.
There was one last thing I asked Jacques Patinet, the man who helped release France's UFO files, what advice he would give to the American government.
Bon, j'ai pas vraiment de conseils à donner au gouvernement américain. Je pense qu'il est. Mais bon, je pense que simplement dire que je pense pas qu'il faut avoir peur de la diffusion de ces informations. Voilà, c'est tout. Mais je ne veux pas me permettre de donner de conseils au gouvernement américain, certainement pas.
Con mi avión procedí a perseguirlo y nos hemos ido alejándonos y en ascenso de la base.
I've met with UFO witnesses from around the world, military officers, politicians, and everyday people like you and me.
And he says, this target over here?
They come forward with nothing to gain and everything to lose because they want answers.
All the way across this valley.
Not the same old explanations of swamp gas, military flares, weather balloons, or misidentified aircraft, but the truth.
There's no reason for me not to say what I saw. I had nothing to hide. I have nothing to gain. You know?
Maybe somebody involved with the U.S. government knows the origin of these craft, but I don't.
All of a sudden, 10 degrees to my right,
if they're